I mean, I suppose I should probably be feeling good about the fact that I still feel disappointed with just getting 1 point out of the game in Carolina. It is a very good team, and it was an away game, so at least it means I still have hope. What's cracking, everybody, and welcome back to Kraken R&R, where the Seattle Kraken fall 3-2 in overtime to the Hurricanes in Carolina, at least picking up one more very needed point in the standings. And look, to be honest, I think if coming into this road trip, we had been told that the Kraken were going to get 3 points out of the first 2 games in Detroit and in Carolina, most, if not all of us, Kraken fans would have happily taken that. And yes, the Kraken, by the end of it, probably did get lucky to come away with this game even with that 1 point, but it still doesn't feel good to come away with just 1 point in a game where you had a 2-0 lead. Before we jump right into the recap of the game, though, a couple of notes of housekeeping real quick. One, I will be streaming for the game coming up here on Saturday in Florida against the Panthers, and we're going to have a little bit of fun with this stream, so feel free to jump into that one if you want to or have the ability to. Also, I know the last R&R got a little bit away from me time-wise, so I'll be trying to keep this one a little bit on the shorter end. It wasn't a win, so it won't be as much fun, plus nowhere near as much scoring. Hopefully that'll be able to happen. And then, specifically with this game, there was actually something notable about the Kraken lineup coming into it, and that is that nothing had changed from the game in Detroit, specifically in net, where Daccord got his second start in a row for the Kraken. I'm pretty sure that's the first time he's gotten 2 starts in a row, and certainly the first time he's gotten 2 starts without any sort of injuries leading to it. And honestly, while I would say that I feel pretty good then about Grubauer getting the next start, the way Daccord played in this game, a franchise record-setting night for him, I'm not sure that it's a given Grubauer's getting the net back for this next game on Saturday. And in that vein, as we do now get into the game, Daccord had to be on his toes right from the get-go, as the Hurricanes definitely got out to the hotter start in this one and got the first 5 or 6 shots on goal, as it really did take the Kraken quite a while to get things going and, well, register their first shot on goal for that matter, as even though they did get into the offensive end a couple of times here and there through the first few minutes, they just could not seem to overcome the Carolina backcheck as one of the worst defensive teams. In fact, the team giving up the most goals in the NHL coming into this game suddenly decided to start playing defense like they had last season. Unfortunately, it happened when the Kraken were in town, but either way, Carolina comes out strong on defense and limits Seattle's offense until about the midway part of the first period, when eventually the Kraken do start at least generating some rush chances. And it's actually off of one of those rush chances following an Eberle spinorama backhand that he doesn't end up scoring on. He's good for at least 1 or 2 highlight reel backhand goals a season. It doesn't come on this one for him. But the puck right into the neutral zone gets broken up by Jaden Schwartz, I'm pretty sure, who gets it to Bjorkstrand. Bjorkstrand carries it in all alone, but then he just puts Brent Burns on skates, which isn't probably the best saying for a hockey game. But either way, he jukes the pants off of Burns. Burns just keeps on sliding as Bjorkstrand puts the brakes on, gets to the center of the ice, and fires off a quick shot that beats Anderson into the top corner and gives the Kraken the 1-0 lead. So hey, you know what? Even if it wasn't the best start offensively for the Kraken, they still found a way to get on the board first. And ultimately, that's all that ends up mattering, as we've seen the other way already a couple times this season. And not only do they get on the board first, but they get back on it with the second goal of this game as well. As a couple minutes later, once again, it's Oliver Bjorkstrand, this time starting the scoring play for the Kraken at around the Kraken blue line as he's going off for the end of his very next shift after having scored on the previous one. He sees, of all people, Devin Shore cherry picking on the Carolina blue line and lofts a pass through the neutral zone and into Carolina's end, which Devin makes a beautiful play just to get this puck to settle for him, whacking it out of the air and then out in front of him, where he then makes another very nice play to go backhand to forehand, back to backhand. And does Devin score? He sure does, putting it through the 5-hole to give the Kraken the 2-0 lead and getting him his first goal in a Kraken uniform. So sure, again, his Kraken debut in the last game in Detroit was not particularly great, as really his only notable impact again was that 2-minute double minor, 4-minute double minor that he took that allowed Detroit to tie the game. But he comes back with an overall fantastic game. Again, wasn't on the ice a ton, but has a highlight reel goal here to give the Kraken that 2-0 lead late in this first period. Unfortunately, however, the Hurricanes were not interested in going away quietly or allowing the Kraken to continue running up the score like, well, the Kraken did just about a week ago, and pretty much every team has been doing against this Carolina Hurricanes team so far this season, as they lock things down defensively at that end, and then also really ramp up the pressure back the Kraken way, not wanting to go into this intermission down 2-0. And Daccord has to make a couple of very nice saves in tight here in the next minute or two. He's able to do that, but eventually it's one chance too many for the Hurricanes, as a play that actually starts with Daccord playing the puck. And again, he was all over the place playing the puck in this game, and even a few times, I would admit I was a little bit nervous, but would have been much more nervous if it was at least 80% of the other goaltenders in the league. But Daccord clearly knows what he's doing with the puck, at least the vast majority of the time anyway. And this time, again, it's really not his fault that this puck ends up in the net, as he makes a nice behind-the-back, no-look bounce pass off of the boards behind the net to Brian Dumoulin on the other side of the net. But as Dumoulin's backing up to receive this pass, he, I guess, forgets that the ice is slippery and goes butt over heels, feet up in the air, and while he is able to at least get a piece of the puck, swinging his stick wildly to try and prevent it from sliding into open ice, it still is collected by the Hurricanes, who then bank it behind him back around to the other side of the net, and then another pass later it ends up out in front where Natchez is able to finish it to at least bring the Hurricanes back to within one, which is where the score would stay going into the first intermission, a 2-1 lead for the Kraken. But it could have been worse than that, as the Hurricanes have already recorded 15 shots on goal at this point, and a couple of pretty good ones. As we get into the second period, then, fortunately for the Kraken, they are at least able to clean things up on defense. They still do end up allowing another 16 or maybe even 17 shots on goal for a total of 32 after 2 periods for the Hurricanes. But at least the shots they allow in the second period, and really even the ones they allowed for the most part early in the first, are almost entirely from the outside of the offensive end and through clean shooting lanes where Daccord is able to see the shot coming the entire way and make then relatively easy saves. It honestly kind of at times felt like the opposite of the Kraken offense, especially from the inaugural season, where we'd see them have these games that they would rack up maybe not high 30s to low 40s that frequently, but a decent number of shots on goal and even outshoot opponents. But because it was all coming from the outside and taking a lot of shots, say, up by the blue line without anybody screening or in front of the net, they just weren't able to generate much scoring off of it. Meanwhile, even though they weren't allowing much back the other way as far as shot quantity, the shot quality they were allowing was pretty high. And that was the case in the first period, where again, although the Kraken didn't get a ton of shots in that first period, the shots that they got were pretty good ones to score off of. And the score reflected that. And to be perfectly honest, that kind of continued throughout the rest of regulation all the way through the third period. Now, as far as the second period is concerned, to tie that up, it is a scoreless second period, so we get to the end of 2 with the score still 2-1, even with both teams getting their lone power plays for the game towards the back half of the second. Neither end up scoring on it, obviously. The refs really staying out of this game, which I think Kraken fans are all too happy about after that just nut house of a game in Detroit when it came to officiating. It was nice to see the refs just stay out of this one and let the players play, even though it didn't necessarily have the, by any means, intensity play-wise of a playoff game. The officiating kind of had that style of really calling it loosely and letting the players play this one out. Anyway, as we get into the third period, at this point, it almost seems like the Kraken are just content with turtling up defensively in their end of the ice, and as far as creating offense is concerned, just waiting for the Hurricanes to make mistakes and try to create rush chances to score that way, going back the other way. And I suppose, considering how Daccord was playing in this game, how he was seeing the puck, and the fact that Kraken were defensively keeping most of the offense to the outside for the Hurricanes, plus they had been getting their rush chances here and there from Carolina, maybe it wasn't the worst idea in the world, and honestly, it very well may have worked had they not decided to try and get a little bit too cute when those rush chances presented themselves. Again, the Kraken did a pretty good job of keeping defense to the, or offense for the Hurricanes to the outside of the defensive end, and did capitalize off of a couple of Carolina mistakes to create some rush chances going back the other way. But unlike the first period when they were shooting off of the rush and scored a couple of times as a result, they just kept getting too cute with a couple of extra passes or forcing passes with odd man rushes instead of taking those shots. Off the top of my head, I can think of a time where Beniers tried to force a pass across to, I think, Eberle on a 2-on-1. That got broken up without a shot. McCann tried to force a pass across to Gord that got broken up without a shot. And then Eberle tries to get a little bit too cute on a rush as well. That one ends up coming back to bite the Kraken. And although this one isn't necessarily on an odd man rush for the Kraken, it is still a case of one pass too many from Eberle in the offensive end that's defended well by Carolina. They get quick possession and create a rush chance going back towards the Kraken end. Again, it's not an odd man rush type of situation, but the Kraken just do not defend this very well. Two players end up going with the guy that carries the puck into the offensive end. He gets the pass across, I think it was to Necas again. Necas then, with just Larson in front of him, makes a nice spinning move and then finds two guys. He has two guys wide open coming into pass to. He passes to the one on the far side, and that is put into the back of the net without much Daccord can do. It's just three nice passes on the rush from the Hurricanes because they actually had guys open to pass to rather than trying to force it through a passing lane that wasn't there. And as a result, it ends up tying the game. And I think part of the reason that this is extra frustrating to have watched the way the Kraken were playing these rush chances in the third period is that we just saw the probably correct way to play this more often than not work in the last game in Detroit. When Schwartz was on that rush with Bjorkstrand on the other side, there was a guy standing in the passing lane on a 2-on-1 rush, and Schwartz looked at the pass, but then ultimately decided that it wasn't going to be there, or at least it wasn't going to be a high percentage pass to make, so he took the shot with, again, the two outcomes being either you create a rebound or potentially you score. And in fact, that's what he did on that shot, was he ended up scoring on it. But instead, the Kraken, in both instances that they had clear 2-on-1s, tried to force that pass across. Both times it got broken up, and then you don't even get that shot on goal for a chance to score, much less a rebound that could go to either one of the two players that you have with only one defender. So I suppose if there's anything that I would like the Kraken to take away from this game as they fly down to Florida to play the Panthers and into the rest of the season, would be maybe just go back and watch that highlight reel of Schwartz's play on that 2-on-1 in that game in Detroit, and then play it like that the rest of the way. Look, if there's a clear pass there, yes, it does improve your chance of scoring if you can get that pass across, but if the guy, the one defender, is playing it well, there's no reason to ever force that pass across. Just take the shot, and your chances of scoring are going to be better by taking that shot with the outcomes that can come from it, because it's probably going to be an open shot. Anyway, getting back to the game, as we all know, this would be the last score of regulation. Not much happened through the last couple of minutes. Both teams, I think, were content with getting at least 1 point out of this game. So we go to overtime, where, again, it looked kind of like the Detroit overtime. The Kraken had possession for most of it, but both teams kind of, well, didn't necessarily fumble their chances in the same way they did in overtime against Detroit, but both teams weren't able to get clean shots off on goal. I think McCann might have gotten one off, but it wasn't necessarily a high danger shot. And eventually, in the final seconds, almost in opposite fashion of what happened the last game, the Kraken get a shot off. I think it was that McCann shot in tight that, again, didn't have a great chance of scoring. And then right back the other way, Carolina gets in a couple passes later. It's an open look for Necas, and he puts it right into that near side. Pretty much the same shot. Well, maybe not the exact same shot. The location was definitely different, as this shot from Necas comes more from the slot rather than off to the side, like Raymond had that opportunity at the end of overtime in the one in Detroit. But it's the same little bit of window there on that side of the net, the blocker side for Daccord. That this time it doesn't go off the post. It goes into the back of the net to give the Canes, with 10 seconds left in overtime, the 3-2 winner. So then, as far as takeaways from this game are concerned, other than what we just talked about with how they're playing those rush chances, especially the 2-on-1s and trying to overpass the puck in the offensive end, defensively, I'm pretty happy with how the Kraken played this game. Yeah, you definitely want that shot total to come down. You can't expect your goaltender to make 40 plus saves a game like Daccord does in this one, setting a franchise record with the number of saves he makes. But still, it was keeping all of that, or at least the vast majority of it, to the outside and giving Daccord clean lanes to see those shots from, setting him up at the very least for success, even if it was a lot of success over the course of the whole game. And when it comes to limiting those shots and the total of shots, playing better in the neutral zone and playing better in the offensive end would certainly help that. Keeping the puck in control in the offensive end for more of the game would limit how much the opposing team could have the puck in your end by process of elimination and just how time works. So I think defensively they played it well. You just want to improve the other two areas of the ice, and then you won't have to play as much of that defense. Still, with that having been said, with this game specifically and this opponent specifically, with it being in Carolina against a team that, even if they have not gotten off to an ideal start to the season for themselves either, is, I think, still one of the better teams in the NHL and does have a very good defensive system that we saw last year that I would expect them to get back into even after their terrible start to the season as far as that's concerned. I mean, who knows? Maybe this game will be their turning point when it comes to that. And they do also play pretty well offensively, which we did see in this game. Even if they couldn't quite get to the inside the way they wanted to, they were still definitely trying. So for the Kraken to allow the number of shots they did and still come out of this game with a point, you know what? Even if they did give up a multi-goal lead to get that point, it's still, in the end, I think a good point to have in the standings, especially with the Kraken desperately needing to get at least 1 point out of these games on the road against good teams. And finally, for the last takeaway in this game, it has to be the game of Joey Daccord. And for that matter, that might as well transition us neatly, or not so neatly, easy enough for me to say, into the Kraken 3 stars of this game, which, as a reminder, if you want to be part of helping decide the Kraken 3 stars for these R&Rs, you can help support the channel a little bit more by joining over on Patreon through the link down below. To help support a little bit more than you already are by watching this video at this point. With that being said, the first star of this game for the Kraken is without a doubt Joey Daccord. Again, sets a franchise record for saves in a game with 42 saves on 45 shots, obviously including overtime. And for Daccord, it was just an incredible showcase of goaltending. Yeah, like I mentioned throughout, especially that second and third period, a lot of the stops that he was making were from the outside with pretty clear shooting lanes to see those shots. So not necessarily high difficulty saves. He made a couple of those in the first and another pretty difficult one in the second. But still, the volume is impressive for him to come up with that many saves. And for that matter, he was not allowing rebounds. So even if those shots were coming from the outside, he was doing a very good job of controlling the puck when it came to him and not allowing secondary opportunities, which helped prevent there from being very many of those high danger ones. In fact, the two that they end up scoring off of, while they are high danger opportunities to score for the Canes, came off of passing plays and not much Daccord could do about it. Heck, even the one in overtime was the same thing. And that is, again, to not even mention how much fun it is to watch him leave the net to go play the puck, which is very useful when you can have a goaltender that can play it that well, almost acting like a third defenseman at times. Now, yes, he has to be able to do it very cleanly and not give the puck away, because if he does after leaving the net, it's almost certainly going to turn into a goal, but that's part of what's made him so good at doing it, is that he makes smart decisions with the puck when he has it. Other than Daccord, though, I think the second star is also a fairly clear one. I would say Oliver Bjorkstrand, with at least the first period that he had, certainly set himself apart from the pack in this game. He has that first goal that got the Kraken on the board, and then also was the one that had the pass to release Shore for the second goal, plus in general just had a pretty good game for the Kraken. The third star, though, I would say it's a little bit harder to come up with a clear third star for the Kraken in this game. Not to say there isn't going to be one. There certainly are other guys deserving of being a star in this one of whom that was mentioned on Patreon, and I think this is a good shout out, would be Jaden Schwartz, who was probably the second best player offensively for the Kraken in this one to Oliver Bjorkstrand. But ultimately, I'm going to end up going with Eli Tolvanen. Now, Tolvanen has not gotten off to the offensive start to the season that many, certainly including myself, expected him to after the preseason that he had. And just another example of why that's preseason and we can't read into it too much. Again, it's just a few games, so I think he will get going eventually. But even though he didn't do a lot offensively in this game, Tolvanen may very well have been the best defensive player for the Kraken in this game. Certainly the best defensive forward, I would say. So felt like while it was a quiet game for him in the aspects that we usually look for from Tolvanen, he had a number of blocked shots and just generally played well at that end of the ice, which is especially what the Kraken are looking for from him and that third line. So once again, for the 3 stars, I'm going with a clear 1 for Joey Daccord, and also fairly clear number 2 for Oliver Bjorkstrand. And again, I felt like it at least deserved a shout out, and he played well enough to deserve a 3rd star. So for his defensive efforts, pretty much alone, Eli Tolvanen as the 3rd star. Honorable mention will be Jaden Schwartz. With that having been said, I'd love to know your thoughts as always down in the comment section below. Again, if you want to be a part of picking the Kraken 3 stars, you can help out a little bit more with Patreon. Let me know how you're feeling coming to this game in Florida. A reminder, I will be streaming for that game, so if you have the ability to and would like to, come join and watch along for that game. I think it's 3 o'clock on Saturday. It's on ESPN if I have that wrong, so check there, but I'm pretty sure it's 3 o'clock Pacific time on Saturday, so a good middle of the day game. And other than that, if you made it to this point, thank you very much for watching. If you did like or enjoy this video and want to see more of these, there are buttons for that kind of stuff that are free to press down below to help support the channel. If you want to help support a little more, once again, plug the Patreon. And until next time, in Florida and streaming, stay safe out there. Be good to each other. God bless and go Kraken.